Good morning and welcome. Unfortunately, this is a sad day or a few days for our community, in particular our school district. What started as a physical altercation at the basketball game last Saturday night between two of our schools, the fisticuffs turned into um, some gun violence. And so two people were injured, and it's been well chronicled that we had a former student, 18 years old, who had withdrawn from our schools and was going to a local charter school, who was injured by a weapon. We also have a very, very brave female officer who was hit, and she is recovering well, and so her recovery looks to be a full recovery. The former student, his injury is very significant, and I understand that our thoughts and prayers are with everybody as he goes through that recovery. But we're also grateful, if you saw the video, and many of us did, how quick our police department, Dallas ISD Police Department that was in the stadium, responded to minimize the situation that occurred. It could have been much worse. We want to thank them for their support. I also want to be very clear. Please do not blame SOC, and please do not blame Kimball for this. This was totally out of their control. Extracurricular activities has been a district goal for the last several years, and we encourage kids to be there. And it wasn't just the players. As you saw the video, we saw cheerleaders scrambling. We saw parents scrambling. There were about 650 people in the arena when it happened. This was an incident that has spilled over from the community, but we cannot absolve our responsibility because it happened on our watch, on our property. I've been an educator a long time, and I've been in Dallas a long time. And what's really disappointing to me is that the public schools, in my personal history of being a student for 11 years, 10 years in Dallas, being a teacher for 8 years and a coach, and being a superintendent now for 11 years, there was kind of this truce. The truce is that those activities happen off campus. Well, that truce is now over because it now spilled over onto our campus, which makes this even much more difficult. But SOC and Kimball are not to blame. They are bystanders, just like everybody else who was involved in this altercation. Going forward, we will finish the basketball game. These are two historic programs. They've both won state championships. They're both in the top 20 in the state. There was 1:31 left in the game. That game will resume this afternoon at 2 o'clock at Forrester Field at a neutral site. The game will not be open to the public. The students have been allowed to invite their parents, and we will be there so that these students can finish this game that has very high stakes for them as they try to pursue a state basketball championship. But we also want to do it under a controlled environment. Right now we have counseling for these students over at the field house right now. As you could tell, the trauma that they incurred as the game was coming down to the end. So we will, going forward, we will implement some very significant changes to our protocols. Yes, we wanted kids to be involved, and so we're going to have to make some adjustments because of this crisis. So going forward, there will be no bags or purses or backpacks allowed in our stadiums. We will now, unfortunately, we don't have enough metal detectors to put, and by the way, we're also decentralizing our competition. We are having more games at our gyms, Conrad, Adamson, Hillcrest, and in the very near future, South Oak Cliff and Carter will be playing games at their home games. However, we do have wands that we can use, that we will utilize as a more stringent protocol as we prepare for these games. I go to the Maverick games a lot, and I have to go through those security issues like they do. And you notice it's very labor intensive when you walk in a Mavericks game and how long it takes you to get through there. But it is what it is, and we have to rethink our protocols. We're going to implement some measures as soon as tomorrow. We have a lot of ball games on Tuesday. We have a lot of ball games this week, both boys and girls, and we have multiple facilities. So we'll utilize the best resources that we have to try to handle those. We also, going forward, we will have a few long-term things that we'll need to convene. We've been working with some people about weapons detection devices. We're going to get a task force, and since now that it's apparent that we need to be more intentional about our interface with the gang intervention units and some of the gang issues that are occurring in our community. And we need to have a task force to, as the mayor has taken this matter seriously, as our police chief has taken this matter seriously, then we too as well need to do that. But I also want to thank the Dallas Police Department. Their very quick action helped us apprehend the suspect, and the suspect is in custody. And I'm very disappointed to tell you that it is one of our students. And so it does create another layer of complexity. And so it does make sure we're required now to really focus and take this matter as seriously as we have taken them. It wasn't enough. And now we got to do more. And so I do appreciate DPD for their quick action. I also want to say that there were some brave individuals. There's this culture of do not snitch. But because of the media coverage and the photographs that we had some people identify the suspects almost immediately. And like we tell our students, you see something, you say something and you do something. And this one occurred because people stepped up and they said, we cannot have this in our backyard. So that's the status of where we are. We have our police chief, Chief Lawton. We have representatives from Dallas PD. I'll be glad to, and we have Adam Bazaldua, who is a part of our city council, who's a former teacher here to help show this unity. And so now I'll be glad to entertain a few questions that you may have.
Can you talk more about what happened inside Ellis Field Service? How did this begin? Was your officer intervening in an altercation or something at the moment? What happened?
I will start the part of that. Obviously, as I described, late in the third quarter, there was some fisticuffs that occurred. And so then, Chief Lawton, I don't know if you know what to answer, if that's still under investigation, but then the weapon was discharged, and that's how our officer, I don't know if she was headed to the area, but she was struck. I don't know if there's anything you need to go.
That's pretty much all we can share. That's pretty much all we can share right now. Basically, there was a disturbance. Our officers responded. Some of the juveniles were fighting. At the time that we were in the process of escorting a couple out, at that point, the gunshots rang out. And then the officers went into action to mitigate that threat.
Was the 15-year-old part of this altercation?
I can't really say. I just know he was a victim as a result of the altercation that was going on.
The 18-year-old?
The 18 was the victim, I'm sorry, but the 15. And I really don't want to go into details. There's an investigation going on, and I don't know if DPD would like to elaborate on that. But
the concern with that, I would assume with that question is that it's one thing for an 18-year-old to be a victim of a gunshot, but as the question suggests, was he part of that disturbance where he was targeted, or was he an innocent?
no, he was actually in that group. He was involved in that group, yes.
He was part of the fight?
Correct.
Altercation?
Correct, part of that group, yes.
Dr. Hinojosa said this was from the community spilled over into the game, so they knew each other and had some adversarial tension between them previously before coming to the game.
Right, and I don't want to speculate on that relationship, and if DPD is prepared to respond to that, but I really don't want to talk too much on that.
Dr. Hinojosa, just the public has always been concerned about public events and accessibility to weapons. So I think the general question many people are asking is, what in the world has happened where you don't have a security system in place to ensure the one thing you don't want in a situation like this is someone to have a gun inside?
Well, it's just the volume, the volume of facilities that we have. This is a high-profile game, and so we had a lot of officers there. But part of our bond planning program is where we're going to, in our bond program, we're going to highly prioritize safety and security. Just as the governor has come out, and I don't want to get into hardening facilities because crime happens and sometimes it spills over, and when you go to a game, you want to be able to enjoy the game. But these are different times. This is happening in our entire community, so at least in the short order, we need to have the best equipment and to be able to harden some of these facilities, as you just described, that need to be better controlled going forward, at least until we manage through this crisis.
I know you said you don't want to speculate about the relationship between the parties involved, but are you treating this as gang violence? Because you talked about a truce, and then later on, Dr. Hinojosa, you mentioned the gang task force, so are you treating it that way?
No, we're not.
Can you step to the mic, Chief?
So to answer the question directly, no, we're not. There's no indication that it was gang-related at all. And from a Dallas perspective, we're just here to assist. We did take the lead on the investigation process, and that's kind of our role in this, just to support the ISD the best way that we can.
Chief, for you to get, I'm sorry, Chief, the 15-year-old turned himself in. Did his parents bring him in? What happened when he came into headquarters?
Yes, his mother brought him in.
Dr. Hinojosa, you talked about what protocols y'all do have in place or apparently weren't enough for some reason. What's that like for you, sir, to get that call that something like this has happened on your campus and having such a huge problem that we're dealing with as a city coming right there to where these children are playing?
In this job, you go on these emotional roller coasters. I was going from so high to so low so fast. So high, we had a great event at South Oak Cliff that day celebrating that beautiful campus. And so I was on a high. I happened to be at the Mavericks ball game as they were finally getting a win. And when I get the call from the chief, and then now everything starts de-escalating. And that's why I wanted to be very precise that we don't blame South Oak Cliff and Kimball for this. This is an incident that happened at one of their games, but it's not a reflection on those two campuses. But it was an emotional roller coaster. And ever since then, you know, we're looking at every decision that we make about how we try to prevent these things. But events happen, and you just got to do the best, and that's why we have to adjust our protocols effective immediately starting tomorrow night.
What does security look like at the venue on the night in question? And you do have metal detectors at Ellis Stadium, because I've gone through them before. Did you have them on scene and just not operational?
We had metal detectors for football games. I don't know about how many staff did you have at the event? And those
So we had a combination of security and police officers. We had about 9 officers that were there. Their responsibilities included securing the doors, the exits, and the entrances, the parking lot, and also the concourse area. Because of the challenges we know that we face with the kids, because they like to congregate around the concession stands, we actually had additional officers in those areas. And in this situation, that's exactly where the incident occurred, was around the concession stands. And that's why we were able to respond so quickly.
Did you not have metal detectors in the building?
We did not have metal detectors in the building. They were over at the football field.
We'll do one more in Spanish, please.
Doctor Hinojosa, ¿nos puede decir cuáles son lo que se va a cambiar después de este incidente que ocurrió en esa cuadra?
Este fin de semana fue muy triste para toda la comunidad del distrito escolar y la ciudad. Y lo que vamos a hacer en el futuro, vamos a cambiar cómo operamos las escuelas en estos juegos. Vamos a tener más policía, vamos a tener equipo que nos va a ayudar para mejorar la seguridad en todos los edificios. Pero les quiero decir que no nada más jugamos en los edificios grandes, también jugamos en las escuelas. Y son hombres y niñas y todos. Y es muy importante que cambiemos lo que estamos haciendo porque es una necesidad muy importante en este momento. Thank you very much for being here. You
No
more.
backpacks, no purses immediately, but metal wands in use immediately?
Yes, we are collecting all the metal wands that we have so that we will have them available. And as I described, Conrad, Adamson, Hillcrest, they play home games, so we have to deploy the resources that we have in the most efficient way because we have multiple games this week.
Are you going to have more security on scene?
Yes, we're going to have more security in the meantime. We're always worried about overtime. Right now, we're not worried about overtime. So we're going to make sure that we authorize Chief Lawton and our school leadership department to have whatever's necessary in this immediate crisis. You'll be coming out, we'll come out with some written protocols that we're adjusting that we'll get to you. Thank you very much for being here and appreciate it.